Welcome back. I'm Helen.
I'm James.
And we are global nomads. And in 2024, we sold everything we owned to retire early and travel the world full time. So, this is part 2 of our 10-part series on how to be a nomad. And today we are going to talk about
It's not too late to save for your retirement. And we're living proof of that.
We definitely are.
So I suppose that what we need to do is to start by giving you some background as to how we ended up here. Back in 2004, we both had very good jobs in the UK. And I had a non-contributory pension and Helen had a contributory pension. So we gave up a lot of our salaries, our company cars, our health insurance and everything when we moved to Florida. Yes. Not the most sensible financial decision.
But hey.
But there you go. We were going for the adventure. So we moved to Florida. And obviously at that point, we stopped paying into our UK pensions. To give you an idea of how much, just to talk about figures, how much we had in those pensions, I had about 270,000 US dollars and Helen had about 75,000 US dollars.
And to put that into perspective, I was 32, 33, you were 35-ish. Yeah.
So we'd had that amount accumulated and then we didn't know what we didn't know, but we moved out to Florida and we bought a flower shop. And I suppose in our heads, perhaps we hadn't even thought about it.
We hadn't. We were very gung-ho and we're going to make it work.
But I suppose the plan should be that as soon as you get to Florida, then you can start contributing to a US pension so that we would keep that going. But really the honest answer is the first couple of weeks that we actually got to Florida, we got hit by 3 hurricanes. We got hit by Charlie, we got hit by Francis, we got hit by Jean. All of them caused some kind of damage to the shop that we'd purchased.
These were all major hurricanes, Cat 3 and above. So.
Yeah, and this is 2004, it's very famous. The first one hit on Friday the 13th. We moved into our house on Thursday the 12th of August. So it we were on the back foot right from the start. We'd taken all the money that we'd made on our house and invested it in the business. We really didn't have a lot left, did we?
No.
So putting money into a pension was kind of not on the radar. We sold the business that we'd purchased in 2006 and took that money and invested it.
Invested it.
Don't follow our advice for investments. We invested it in a condo in Sarasota, thinking that bricks and mortar was a good way of going. It would secure the money. It would make sure we put basically a 50% deposit down on the condo, and that would mean that in 10, 20, 30 years time we could sell the condo, and that would be a first step towards our retirement in Florida.
Things didn't really go as planned. Newsflash, we had one of the biggest recessions known to in history. So that didn't really help us. And basically the value of the condo decreased by about half. At one point, it was worth less than our mortgage, even though we put down over half of the value almost of what we paid for the condo. And so, yeah, we were not in a good place. And our business, which was only 3-4 years old, it had been doing really well until then in terms of growth. And we actually did still continue to grow during the recession, but it was hard. Anybody who was around during those years of 2008, 9, 10 remember the good old days when gas went up to $4.50 a gallon. And part of a flower business is we needed a delivery vehicle, and we were, of course, paying for gas to deliver the flowers. Good times. Not.
So we ended up been in Florida for a few years. We'd not made any contributions to a pension. We still had the money in the UK, and and that's it.
It just sat there.
It just sat
the
there.
company pension we had in the UK just sat there.
We hadn't added any more money to the pot, if you whichever country it was in. So the next step was, what do you do? So we decided to take the money. We were fairly committed to living in Florida. I guess plans change. And we decided to take that money out and put it into what's called a QROPS scheme, which is basically a HRMC, which is the tax office in the UK, a scheme which is approved to transfer your pensions when you no longer live in the country, and they take them out of the company pension regime and just put it in a personal pension scheme.
And things were a little bit more complicated for me because I had moved jobs. I've worked in private companies and like government sector industry. So I actually had, I think, 4 or 5 different pots. It was a bit easier for you because you only have one.
I just had one pot, and we were just moving that one pot and putting it into what we believed was an approved scheme to allow our pensions to grow.
There's a whole process you have to go to that takes months for the government to approve you moving this money. Because the way it works in the UK, you basically pay less social security and national insurance in the UK. You pay a bit less to allow you to pay more into your pension scheme. And so for the government to release your money to go into a new scheme, they basically it has to be an approved scheme because they've given you a bit of a free ride on a bit that you needed to pay them. And this scheme that we moved to was approved.
It was.
And the financial advisor we used was regulated and approved, supposedly a legit company and a legit person. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. Well, he was approved. He was registered, but he was not legit. Let's put it that way.
So the financial advisor that we used actually had had stories printed in the Guardian that he was an expert in expat pension schemes. We'd done our research. We were well prepared, and we thought we were making a sensible financial decision, and this would allow our pension to grow. We wouldn't be able to contribute to it, but it would allow the pension to grow outside of the UK in a dollar format as opposed to a UK format. It would consolidate our pensions, and it would mean that we'd have a bit of freedom. If anything happened to the companies in the UK, we wouldn't lose our money, and the pension would continue to grow, and all would be good. And we thought we were being sensible.
Spoiler alert, we weren't. Well, I mean, we were trying to be.
What became apparent pretty early on is that the company, the financial advisor, had found a way around the regulations and was not regulated in any way at all by the European governments. FINRA, I think it is. He was not approved, but he'd found a loophole where he'd started registration and never completed it, so that counted as being registered as far as the tax office is concerned. And the company that the money was invested in, which strangely enough was in Malta, because it has to be overseas to be approved by the UK government, basically lost 50% of the money.
About over 50% of what we had.
And so our meagre pension pot, we're now in 2014, between 2014 and 2018, our meagre pension pot had gone down. And
By half.
By half, and we'd still made no more contributions because all our money was going into our business.
And staying afloat.
So between 2009 and 2018, we'd accumulated some debt to keep the business going and to keep us going over that period of time. And and we were just basically throwing all the money that we had into getting that down to zero.
And to just give that a little bit more context, the visa that we lived in the US on was subject to basically keeping the business. So no business, no visa, and we would have to leave. So it wasn't just a case of, well, you should have wrapped up the business, you should have done this, you shoulda, woulda, coulda. If that was the case, we would have been literally homeless, jobless, a bit like now, really, but not in a good way, and penniless. We would have lost everything. So we had, as a lot of people did at the time, accumulated debt just trying to keep the business going. We weren't going on holidays. We actually kept our car that we bought in 2004. We didn't actually trade until 2019. So we were driving a 15-year-old car, to give you some background to that too. So it wasn't just that we were going out and being frivolous and eating out at restaurants and that, it was a pretty rough time.
Well, to say that, we were eating out at restaurants. So one of our clients was Chili's, and they used to pay us in Chili's vouchers. And one year they paid us over $1,000 in Chili's vouchers for Mother's Day flowers.
And remember, in Chili's used to do 2 for 20.
2 for 20.
$1,000 went a long way at getting 2 for 20.
So when we said we didn't eat out,
that was the only place.
The only place we could actually afford to eat out was Chili's, where we would come in with the vouchers. And actually, when we sold the car in 2019,
we found about $25, $30 worth still in the car in the glove box. We could have used those.
We still had some Chili's vouchers in, and so we went and had another dinner at Chili's. So that's the only time we would eat out. We really were. We had no money to put into a pension, and that continued up until the point where we basically had we basically took the company that lost us all our money in the pension to court in Malta through an arbitration scheme.
But that was really with you being a complete dog with a bone. The process took like 3 years.
Yeah. It cost, in terms of fees, the fee to, in Malta, there is an arbitration scheme if you lose money, and the scheme cost $25. I could do it all myself. That wasn't a problem. No issue with language problems or anything like that. Everyone could do it in English. But you have to start it within so many months of having the loss. And although it was a very, very drawn out process that took a very long time, we ended up getting about 70% of the money we'd lost back. And that was really the start for us.
Mm-hmm.
So up until that point, we really hadn't done anything. And that
was 2019 we got the money, 2020?
Yeah, 2019. And by 2020, we still had that money. We hadn't spent it. We also had got rid of all our debt.
February 2020, we made our last payment.
Yes.
Yeah, we all know what happened in March 2020.
So the only thing at that point that we owed was the mortgage.
Yes.
And we were throwing money at the mortgage to try and get rid of it, to try and get out of complete debt. And so that was the first point we could start contributing to a US pension of any kind, because that's the first time we had any money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as Helen said...
And then COVID happened. And as a small business owner, of course, we sat there and went, well, this is it. We're done for. We're never going to recover. And the first few weeks, it was
March and April.
Rough. Yeah, it was rough, as it was for a lot of people. We had business dived. We were trying to keep people employed. It was pretty rough.
In the state that we were in, the governor mandated in Florida that we would have to close our doors because you're not allowed to face customers, but you were allowed to continue doing the business as a delivery business. Now we fared quite well on that, because a lot of businesses either didn't take that opportunity or didn't even have that opportunity. In some states, everything was closed.
Mm-hmm.
but we could survive as a delivery only business and locked our front doors and just took orders by phone and by the internet.
And we gave all the guys and girls that work with us the opportunity to say, look, we completely understand if you don't want to continue to work, that will be fine. You know, we were fully prepared that we would keep it going as best we could with just the two of us, which we had done before. So it was, you know, whatever it would take to keep things going. We only actually had at the time, I think, 4 people that were there with us.
And a driver.
Full time, yeah, and a driver. So we were quite a small group anyway. And everyone agreed they wanted to keep working. And so we kept going.
And that really changed everything for us.
Mm-hmm.
Mother's Day in America is in May. And by the time it got to Mother's Day, there was just this pent-up demand to send flowers or gifts to people that you can't necessarily see, or you can't spend time with, or you're thinking about, or whatever word you want to describe. And business doubled overnight. And people say that, but yeah, we were
literally overnight. We weren't prepared for it.
We could have had floorboards with Happy Mother's Day written on them, and people would have bought them. We sold out of everything, and then bought more stuff and sold out of that. And then we had wholesalers come into our house at midnight with more plants, and we sold out of them. It just was insane.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And that just continued then from 2020 all the way through until we sold the shop. And when I say it continued, it didn't just stay at that level. It just continued to get busier and busier and busier all the way through to 2023.
And in the meantime, we moved to bigger premises, newer, bigger premises. In that period as well, I also lost my... but just before COVID, I'd lost my mum and my stepdad, and I got a small inheritance. It wasn't a whole lot of money, but it was enough that we then put that into the pot as well.
So we were finally contributing something to our pot. We started paying money into US pensions. Every single penny we could either went on the business in moving to the new premises, or paying down the mortgage to get rid of that, or going into our pension pot. And we had no idea, this is like 2020 onwards, that our plan was to be a nomad. We just always wanted to get rid. We've always paid extra off the mortgage whenever we could. And we just wanted to try and get back to some kind of semblance of having some kind of money behind us and retirement. And maybe one day we'll be able to get there.
And the only other debt that we had was the car loan, because the good old Dodge Durango, the 2003 Dodge Durango, finally died on us. And we did change.
You still say one more year.
I know, it would have had one more year, but the AC failed.
We used to carry a hammer in the passenger side footwell. And then if the air conditioning stopped working, when you pulled up at a light, you would lean over and get the hammer and then just give it a tap, and that would get it working again.
Simple. Which is fine until it's July and it's hotter than the surface of the sun in Florida. But that was the only other debt we had, which was on a 0%, I think, when we first got it, wasn't it?
Yeah, we got it 0%.
So it was, you know, a necessity debt-wise, really. And we only have one car between us. So we drove one of the company vans that we had.
Yeah.
But yours was the oldest.
Yeah, mine was a 2014 Ford Transit Connect, still going strong. 2 new engines, but never mind.
Two new engines. I don't know, about 25 different tyres. It felt like the tyres on it would pop constantly on the road here. But yeah.
So we'd finally got to the point where we actually had some money. So this is
2021.
2020, 2021, 2022. Everything was going into getting our debt down, going into the business, we ended up with 3 vans. We paid for one of them in cash, and paying money into the pension. That's really when our retirement journey started.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to April 2023 when we decided that we were going to sell up and be Nomads. And then we took all the money from the business that was sold in October and threw it in the pot.
Which by that time we owed no money on the business. We didn't owe any money to anybody. But that was the business we had started in 2004. So, essentially what we sold it for was profit.
Well, there was a lot of money invested in it, and we just pulled that money back out. So
Yeah. And a lot of sweat and blood.
And tears.
And more blood, yeah.
And injuries. So we threw that into the pot. We threw Helen's inheritance into the pot. The money that we won on the court case from Malta went into the pot. All the money that we'd saved over the last 3 years went into the pot. And then we took the money from the house sale.
Which basically, I should add, from like COVID onwards, we continued to live like we had for the previous years when we were paying debt off, when we really didn't have a lot of the time, surplus income. Literally everything was channeled. Any extra we had was channeled into saving.
Throughout this time, I also had a car accident where somebody drove into the back of me, and very lucky that I had dash cams. If you haven't got a dash cam, you really need a dash cam, especially on the Florida roads. And that ended up being a lawsuit which took, I think, about 4 years to resolve.
Mm.
So we had a little bit more money, and we threw that in the pot.
And about 4 or 5 surgeries.
And 4 or 5 surgeries on my back, and I've got disc replaced and all manner of different things. So the pot started to build up. But when we decided to become Nomads, we still were nowhere near the number that we needed to be at. And if anybody's looked at retirement, normally people go on what's called the Trinity study, which is that if you take 4% of your money each year, then statistically, whatever your pot is, so if your pot's $1 million, pounds, whatever currency you want to use, let's say $1 million. If it's $1 million and you take 40,000 of that, which is 4%, then you'll never run out of money. Statistically, that's the numbers. And we weren't at the number that would give us enough income to be able to live the life that we wanted to live outside of having no job, no business, no house or anything else like that. By some margin, but we decided to go for it anyway. So at this point, Helen was just over 50 and I was about 54. We'd not really considered retirement, how you retire, how much you need for retirement or any of that. And so we thought we'd do some research. And where did we go to? YouTube.
Actually, I kind of came across it by accident.
Yes.
Because I was watching I just used to like to watch travel YouTubers. And then we started looking at Nomad YouTubers. And then we're like, well, we could do this. And then there was one particular channel who kind of did a video a bit like this, actually, about how they had got to the point where they could retire early at similar ages to us. So shout out to To Go Rome, another British couple. You should definitely look up their channel. But he talked about a book he'd read and how that had turned around his investment strategy. And that all sounds a bit like a complete scam, but we looked at this book, which is
The Simple Path to Wealth by JL Collins. And you should read it if you're in our position and you're looking at the future and what you're going to do with your investments. And I don't want to...
We're not giving financial advice.
We're not giving financial advice. We're not financial advisors.
Because believe me, we are not the people you should listen to.
No. We're just telling you what we did.
Yes. And bear in mind, after our experience with the fund in Malta and the advice that we had received, we were very anti-financial advisors and I was very, very, very risk averse. So, I knew that we really needed to invest in the markets, but was very, very hesitant about doing that on the basis of what had happened before and how long it had taken us to claw back and start moving forward again.
So to give you the kind of the summary of that book, there was 2 books really. The first book, The Simple Path to Wealth, basically said, put your money in a low-cost index S&P 500 fund. Don't touch it.
Don't pay a financial advisor a fee.
Don't pay a financial advisor a fee. Choose a very low-cost fund. There's plenty of them, and just let your money grow. And don't get involved with any other specific funds or anything else. Just go with a generic fund that invests over a broad spectrum of US companies to minimize your risk and maximize your growth opportunities. And that's basically what it said. And Helen had to, I read it, and then I gave it Helen and said,
I found the book, said, here, James, read this.
Yes.
And then I read it.
And I said, if we're gonna do this and we're gonna take on our own financial advice, then Helen needs to read this book, because what it basically says is you're gonna put your money in, and your money's gonna go down, and your money's gonna go up, and your money's gonna go down, and your money's gonna go up, and that's all good, because ultimately it's the overall path that you're looking for, and you can't sit there worrying when your fund or stock market or the S&P 500 drops down 10 or 20% in a day, a week, a month, or whatever it is, that you can't let that figure into you can't let it worry you.
Yeah, and ultimately, he goes back to the Great Depression and how the market recovered after that. And statistically, on average, the market grows by 7% a year. Whatever happens throughout any ups and downs, statistically, it has grown since then by 7% a year. So it's really kind of trusting that process, and that may be easier for some people who are used to investing. And for me, I found that process really hard.
and you obviously want to make the most of the money you've got, especially if you haven't got enough to retire on, as we didn't. To do what we wanted to do, we just did not have. Drawing 4% was never going to cut it for us. You've got to cut down on your costs, which means that you cut down on the fees that you pay to the funds. The fund that we use, which is VTSAX, is a very, very low cost fund. And you have to cut down on the advisor fees. So if you've cut down the advisor fees, which is sometimes 1%, and we actually had a quote from somebody to manage our money, and the total costs each year would have been 2%. And you're probably thinking, well, 2% is not that bad. But if the average growth is 7% and then you're paying 2% to them,
and you've got no control over the fund. You're putting your faith in whatever they're suggesting is the right thing to do, which me and my trust issues had a problem with.
So we decided to do everything ourselves. We invested it. We have a spreadsheet with everything on.
When he says we, he means him.
We talk about it.
Yeah. I'm a big picture person. I'm not a...
Helen, everything is in joint names, and Helen knows exactly what it all is. And then as the market goes up and down, she goes, la, 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 I don't want to hear it.
I hear about it if it goes up.
Yeah.
Just not down.
Yeah. So that's what we did. A couple of years ago, we put everything we could into these types of funds, these low-cost index funds, and then just allowed them to grow.
And James talked about there was 2 books that really kind of influenced us. That was one of them. The other one is called Die with Zero. And you'll see a lot of people on YouTube talk about it, and a lot of finance people will talk about it. And essentially, the crux of it is that you build up enough savings to have what they call FU money. That's what he refers to it as. So that if you want to do something different, you want to just live your life, do what you want to do, you've got enough money to say, F you, I'm going to go and do what I want.
So the author, Bill Perkins, talks about a couple of different scenarios where he lives this mantra of die with zero. So firstly, before you go into it, this does not give you the statistical calculation of what age you're going to die and how much you need to get to that age. Okay, this is not the point of the book. The point of the book is that if you want to do something, you should do it sooner rather than later, because it kind of, that's an investment in your memories. Like if you do it 10 years earlier, you're going to remember it for those 10 years. If you do it 10 years later, you might be dead by then. But if you're alive, you might not be physically able to do it, or you might not enjoy it as much. So the example he used, it was his 49th birthday party or 45th birthday party. And he decided to have a big party and invite his mom, his dad, all his friends. They had a band playing and everything else. And he didn't choose to do it when he was 50, because that would have been a significant birthday. He chose to do it when it felt like the right time was right, because 5 years later, those people might not necessarily, I think his father died, a couple of his friends moved on, people were not as well as they should be, and they couldn't have traveled to go to this thing. So doing it sooner rather than leaving it for a few years was basically the die with zero. Once you've got the opportunity, go and have the experience. And that broke us out of the 4% mold and really put us in. We'd lost a friend very, very recently before we became Nomads. And some of the things that he wanted to do, or him and his wife wanted to do, they never got a chance to do it. And they retired in a very comfortable position, but they couldn't get out because as soon as they sold their business, he became ill.
Mm-hmm. And also during the year before, my sister, who was in her 50s, was killed in a house fire. And we don't have kids to leave money to. So for us, it's very much about the whole mantra of die with zero. I'd always joked about whatever we had, I wanted to make sure I'd enjoyed and spent before we died. But it's true, that is the mantra of this book. You know, go and have those experiences. Don't be afraid to spend. And, you know, that is a whole mindset to get into when you retire as well, that you become a spender, not a saver, which kind of goes against everything you've probably done for most of your life. But it's definitely worth a read. Like I said, you'll hear a lot of people talk about it on YouTube and in blog posts. It's a very interesting book to read and a great concept to get behind.
So between abandoning the 4% rule and the whole study that went with that, and deciding to invest the money in our own names and cut out the fees there, and following a mantra of die with zero, it kind of changed the whole
perspective on the whole retirement process and what we were going to do. And if you've watched our travel videos, then you know that we are definitely trying to live that and have done some more experiences that we wouldn't necessarily have done before because I would have been too afraid to spend the money.
We also had a lot of credit card points, which we're going to talk about in another time. So we had a cushion of about 10 million credit card points between die with zero and the simple path to wealth, investing the money ourselves, and going out and doing some real experiences. Although we hadn't reached our target, our goal of how much we wanted to have when we retired, we knew that between Helen's health and who knows what life has got for you around the corner. We knew that the one thing was no one gets any younger. We decided to knock a few of these bucket list items on the head.
Well, that's what we're really prioritising in how we travel.
Yes.
Is the real bucket list things that we want to do.
And the things that perhaps would be harder as we get a bit older.
Mm-hmm. They're already hard, some of them.
Yes. You know, Galapagos. You can do Galapagos at any age you want, but we chose a particular ship that made it very easy. And ultimately, the younger you are, the easier that's going to be. That's a good example. But also Machu Picchu. Also, there's lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of them. So although we didn't get to our goal, we decided to go for it anyway and start retiring early and use the what video that we'll show you later. We use the FIRE mantra, which is financial independence, retire early. But that's another story for another video.
So I think the moral of the story is it's not too late. You can do it. I never ever thought we would be able to retire. And through, yes, some of it was chance through a turn of events, selling the house, consolidating our assets. We've been able to
live the life.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And, you know, we're still living it.
This was not a plan that was 20 years in the making.
It was about a year, 2 years, you know. And like I said, I never considered we would ever be in this position now. It involved making a lot of sacrifices, but then anything that's worth doing is.
I think the thing is, if you're younger and you're watching this video and you want to watch two old fogies...
Put your money in a retirement fund.
Yeah, start early. It makes such a difference. But don't, if you're in the 20s and you start work and you can start putting money into a pension, prioritize it and do it straight away. If you get into your 50s, don't think, and you haven't got money set aside, don't think that that's the end of it. It's going to be harder. There's going to be more sacrifice. It's going to be easier if you put your money away 30 years earlier, especially with compounding and stock market and everything else. But take responsibility and get money put away. If you want to have this kind of lifestyle, you can have it at whatever level you want it to be, but put money away. So that's our story and how we haphazardly got to this page where we could retire early.
So just to clarify as well, when we actually retired in 2023, I had just turned 51.
And I had just turned 54.
54 and a half.
54.
And we really got to that stage in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it can be done. If we can do it, believe me, anybody can do it.
And we're not suggesting ours is the best way of doing it.
No, not at all. It's not the way we, would have wanted it to go, but in the end, it's worked out, hopefully.
Yes. So there you go. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. So thanks for joining us. So please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and then you'll be informed when part 3 of this series comes out, which is stuff versus experiences and the joys of Swedish death cleaning. So thanks for watching, and remember, you're here for a good time, not a long time.
See you on the next one.